Good evening, Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe. Welcome to FOB. I like to ask you a few questions. So, my first question will be with the mobility being completely like stopped and accessibility being ruled out completely, what did work from home look like for you?
So personally, for me, work from home was only for the first couple of weeks, from March 22nd onwards till April 1st week. The first phase of lockdown in India, which lasted for 3 weeks, the first 2 weeks were absolutely, everything was almost closed. We used to go to office once in 2, 3 days just from the perspective of security of the building and the property. Otherwise, there was no work happening. But after about 3 weeks, we started functioning. And last 2 months, we have been fully regular. In fact, sometimes when Saturday, Sundays, holidays also, we have gone for the work. The reason was our approval process takes place during this phase. Annual approval, which according to Parsonal judgment, AICT is mandated to give approvals to all old colleges as well as new colleges who want to enter into the system by April 30. And March was the crucial month actually, and the April month. But March end to the April half, we were not able to do anything. So there was a lot of backlog. So we had to clear it, and we started off working online. Many things started happening.
Last 2 months have been a little chaotic because there are like different changes happening rapidly in the education system. How often are you communicating with the parents, teachers, and your board members?
We have no board as such, but we have two committees which are called as council and executive committee. We had during this 3 months at least two meetings of the council and four meetings of the executive committee. And it was not necessary that everyone has to come to the office. Only those who belong to our AICT organization were physically present, or one or two of them who were willing to come from Delhi. Rest of them all used to join by whatever methodology we adopted, whether it was in the beginning Microsoft Team, Google Classroom, or WebEx, or Zoom, whatever methodology was available, we used all of them. So that is what we did. And as far as the educational system itself is concerned, we had several initiatives through which we were in a position to contact all our stakeholders. Of course, parents, we don't deal directly, but some parents might have attended these sessions. But our stakeholders essentially are students, faculty members, institute managements, and some of the government representatives from different bodies. I think we had constant engagement with all of them. So I will give concrete examples of many of these various engagements. But what is important and significant, which I would like to reflect, is suddenly the colleges and universities got closed. And therefore, the physical classes, which used to be held in the classroom in the face-to-face mode, abruptly stopped. And students had to go home to the respective places. And many of them, wherever possible, they engaged in online classes using their own internal learning management system. And some others used different types of platforms like what I'm using now, Zoom platform or Microsoft Team or Google Classroom. That was one area. Some of them could not do it, and therefore they were in great trouble of adjusting to the new environment of lockdowns. I think that is what happened. But from AICT, in the very first week, within 4 days, very significant things which we did, I think that is very important. We used to receive a lot of mails from students. They're getting stuck somewhere because they were to travel, and suddenly all travel restrictions came in place. So they could not reach their homes. And some of them got stuck, and hostels were closed, or the hostels were on, but messes were closed, canteens were closed. And then some of them needed medical help. I think there were huge issues which we started realizing in the first 3 days. And we developed a platform called Helpline. It is still active as on today. And there are about 12 different types of things which we said people should come forward to help on one side, and on the other side, help seekers, that is students. And we did sort of matchmaking. So if a student puts in his name and the location where he is, he will get a list of people who are ready to help him in different things actually, whether in terms of food, hostel, accommodation, or it may be transport, medical help, psychological help, internet facility. Any of those things were provided for students through people who were willing to help. And people willing to help were from colleges, some of the faculty members, some philanthropists, NGOs, they all came forward. And this exercise was very, very crucial in the beginning because we saw in terms of labor who were having a lot of trouble, our students did not face as much trouble actually. They were immediately got help from somewhere or the other.
That's like a amazing platform that you have created. So I like to congratulate you on that. So as we are seeing that there's a digital shift in education, I would like to know how do you think is it a sustainable transformation?
I think digital shift was already happening. It is not that because of COVID-19 it has come through. If you look at the platform like Swayam, which was created by MHRD AICT, which has now more than 2,500 different courses from domains from arts, commerce, science, engineering, law, medicine, and humanities. All of them are available on the platform. There are more than 1.2 crore users who are associated with this platform. We also have 114 countries watching our platform. And there are unique platforms all over the world like MIT edX or Coursera or Udacity. So I think people were already getting used to getting education in their doorsteps on their respective either mobile phone or the laptop or the PC. So I think some way the digital education had begun. It only is now accelerated because of the urgency that has come. So the post-COVID, there will be a new normal, which people are calling new normal.
Yes.
And the normal would be slightly different from the earlier normal. But nevertheless, it would never be only what is during COVID-19 happening, nor exactly the same way as it used to happen earlier. There will be a mix of the two, which will continue to happen. And there will be a big push for digital education in the post-COVID era.
Right. So now many of the exams are going to, the entrances are going to go online. So are there any like concerns that you have in an online exam?
I think there are no concerns. In fact, most of the entrance exams for that matter were already in a way online. They were actually on the computer-based tests, which were in implementation for quite some time now. Because most of the questions are objective type, and therefore in an online mode, people will get a question and 4 or 5 choices, and you have to select one of them. Maybe sometimes you have to do some background calculation, but nevertheless, the answer is in the form of A, B, C, D.
Yes.
And therefore, in a way, online tests had already started happening.
Yes.
But when it comes to physical paper writing in terms of 3-hour paper with pen and paper, and that is where transformation is likely to happen. And many of them during lockdown have experimented with platforms where students will use pen and paper, write the answers, and then scan and upload. And then they are evaluated by the examiner. So I think there are different models that are emerging. But as I said, examination per se existed already. Now, when it comes to the earlier examinations, even though they were computer-based examinations, they used to happen in a computer lab where the student had to go to a college and where there are about 200, 500 computers depending on the capacity of the institution. And there were invigilators who were invigilating. So instead of pen and paper, there was an examination where students used to go in one place. Today, that is a challenge actually because of social distancing, which has to be maintained. If the capacity earlier was say 600, now it cannot be more than 300, maybe 250, maybe 200. And therefore, the challenge of numbers, is what is boggling all of us actually at this point in time. But provided the technology is effectively used, one can take the examination from the respective homes, provided internet capability, bandwidth availability, no disturbance in the drop down of the internet. If that happens, one can take examination from their home, not necessarily come to the examination hall at all. I think that is also feasible because every device, whether it is a mobile on which an examination can be taken, or a laptop or a PC, we already have almost all equipment with a camera, and camera is watching you, whatever you are doing. So if you are writing an answer, and if you have to look at something else, naturally your eye movement will go here, there, and that can be observed by the camera. And depending on suspicion level, the camera can stop the examination and warn the student. First time it may warn, and second time, like invigilators in the classroom used to do, don't copy, and still students, when a teacher turns around, they probably will be opening up the chits and all that. Instead of that, now camera is watching, and probably this is a much more robust way of doing it, because the faculty has to observe 50 students in a classroom, in a hall. Here, every student is observed by one camera. This is like an eye we put on that. But those tools are still expensive, so people have to develop more robust mechanisms, and also storage of all this information. All this has already happened. Many people are already using it. So there should be no possibility of not holding examination. There are ways of doing it.
Right. So with all this, what do you think the government, what steps can the government take to make it easier for the students and the teachers?
The first and foremost, during these 3 months, what we have observed is there has been a challenge in terms of internet connectivity and bandwidth. Even in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Bangalore, which are major cities, at times internet drops. Even if we have a couple of connections at home, broadband connection, sometimes the speed is robust, sometimes suddenly it drops. There is a disconnectivity. So I think this challenge, when it is existing in even urban areas, we can think about the rural areas and remote areas. And therefore, that is the first challenge that the government has already started addressing. There have been several meetings of the cabinet minister who have taken all this difficulty that the people have got into. And like we had every village to have a road connectivity,
Right.
so that transportation is taken care of. The next phase was electricity to all the villages. The government announced last year itself that now we have reached every village, but every home still does not have electric connection. And similarly, every village and every home should have internet connectivity, which is robust, which is stable. And then probably all that what we are speaking today need not be theoretical, but practically very easily implemented.
What would you like to advise the parents and students about these, rapid changes? Like, there are many people who are not really, they don't have accessibility to everything. So, like, what advice could you give them?
No, I think on that earlier point itself, I would like to add something more. Then government certainly can create infrastructure. We have BharatNet program, under which the internet connectivity will reach to all nooks and corners. But whether students have the devices, actually not all people can afford devices, that is either laptop or a smartphone. And that is where either government will probably have to give some 20% very low income group free access of these kind of devices, like scholarship is given. So this is one form of scholarship for them. And second part possibly is many IT companies like NASCOM has said that each year they turn around 500,000 computers, laptops from their organizations, big organizations, TCS, Infosys, Lab, all of them buy the new computers and then old ones are discarded, even if they are continued to be distributed. Lastly, all middle class, above middle class families who have multiple mobile phones in their homes. Because whenever a model changes, we have a new mobile phone which we buy. So the old one, if we can donate to the library of the institutions, whether school or high school or college, I think they can in turn distribute it to those who cannot afford. And then data, part of the data should be given free for the low income group, either in terms of direct beneficiary transfer by providing money and then they buy it, or companies themselves under CSR can give free data for some set of students. I think if you do that, I think reachability is going to be possible. I think this is one part. So rather than advise, I think it is always suggestive, where everyone is intelligent enough to decide what is best for each one of them. But as far as suggestion from a body like us is concerned, we have been doing whatever is best possible. I would like to give 3 examples of how we transformed during this time. which was a challenge in terms of all the problems that everyone faced, into an opportunity by way of conducting several faculty development programs. I'll just compare the areas like AI, IoT, machine learning, deep learning, 3D printing, robotics, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, cyber security, cloud computing. All of these are emerging areas where people need a lot of education, and especially faculty. And then in turn, faculty can teach them in their respective classes. So we had faculty development program under Atal Academies going on last year itself. So in the last 1 year, 200 programs were planned. We could complete 185 of them because pandemic started. So last 15 could not be conducted. But in 185, whereas we could train about 9,600 faculty members during these 3 months using platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Team and WebEx, we have been able to reach out to 18,000 faculty with as many as only 85 programs. All of them are 5-day full programs having 4 hours sessions every day, and then additional session of interaction between the participants, and each program having 250, 300 people, faculty members, rather than in the face-to-face mode limitation of only 50. I think this is a boon in some way that we have been able to do it. Then Universal Human Values Program, examination reforms workshops, then research workshops, all of them totaling to supporting more than 25,000 to 30,000 faculty in just 3 months. If this continues, in this year itself, we will be touch basing every faculty member in the whole country, actually in technical education.
That's amazing.
So the advice is, don't worry, this pandemic is there for some time. It will anyway go. This time will also pass by, and we need to be confident. We need to be, what we say, Atma Vishwas hona chahiye. And that Atmanirbhar will start from education and engagement from the ground level, from the rural areas to the towns and municipalities to corporations to states to the nation. I think as a nation, we have stood very, very strongly in this pandemic period in the last 3 months, they compared to many advanced countries, despite all odds that we have. And that is the strength that we have witnessed. And there should be no worries, whether it is internship, whether it is jobs, whether it is future of education, everything will fall in place. There may be some delay. We should accept this delay and then go ahead and forge ahead and conquer coronavirus as well as a nation come successful.
Yes. Thank you so much for your lovely thoughts. I'm pretty sure all our viewers are going to get a lot of insights about how they should deal with the current crisis.